Let's talk about high fructose corn syrup, for example. Where does that come from and why is that bad for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's chemically created in a lab from corn, which is a bioengineered ingredient, so that's another component of it, and heavily sprayed with glyphosate. It's created and added to food because it's really cheap, right? It's cheaper than just putting regular sugar into foods. But the problem with it is that it spikes your blood sugar even more than regular sugar does. But then it ends up in everything in processed food because it's cheap, it's easier to produce. They put it in ketchup, they put it in salad dressing, they put it in a lot of things. I've heard that it's in vitamins, like gummy vitamins for children and for adults.
The other thing about fructose, like you mentioned, is like it's in everything now, unfortunately. And so does your app flag this as a problem?
Yes. We have a section for added sugar because there can be over 60 different names that sugar can pop up as on an ingredient label.
Hi, Julia. Thank you for joining me on the Extend podcast today. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we were just laughing right before we started taping because we got into a deep conversation already about ultra-processed foods and our kids. And so we're like, wait, we need to stop and we start taping this.
This is the good stuff. Other people need to hear it.
Yeah. So Julia is here because she developed an incredible app called Trash Panda, which is going to be a game changer in nutrition. And I wanted to get the story, like why you developed it and hear about you and what made Trash Panda come about. And maybe before we even talk about that, let's just talk about the app, Trash Panda. And what does it do in big picture?
Sure. So it helps people read ingredient labels so that they can choose healthier options. It specifically focuses on the ingredients in food, so not the nutrition facts, not the calories, but what is the quality of the ingredients in the food? Are they made out of whole foods or are they made out of ultra-processed chemical additives and things like that? So for the average consumer, it can be overwhelming when they start to read the ingredient labels and try to understand what's in their food because there are thousands of chemicals in our food today. They have weird names. We don't really know what they are, what they do. So the Trash Panda app helps people kind of decipher those ingredients, learn about what they are, what the impact of eating those ingredients would be on their health, and then they can make that more informed choice about what they purchase at the grocery store and where they want to spend their money.
Yeah. I think about food ingredient labels a lot. And they've gone through such a crazy history, first of all, to even exist, right? And then for so many, I would say decades, as they've been on food now, people have been really focused on not the ingredients, more about what's the breakdown of the macros, how much sugar does it have, calories, protein, right? And you have to become like a little bit of a detective to understand what those mean and how they affect your body. And then the ingredients, there's so many different chemical names in there, and it's so hard to really decipher what any of that means, right? And so I think the way I've always talked about it with my patients and my kids is like, if you can't pronounce those words, don't eat it,
Yeah.
And, but I do think there's a lot of nuance there too, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of nuance there about what some of these ingredients really are. Some of them sound like they have long sciencey names, but they are just like normal ingredients, And it'd be great to kind of dive into some of that and why it's important. But before we do that, I'd love to talk to you just like, why did you make this app?
Yeah. I have had my whole career in software development. So I was a product manager building and kind of defining user experiences for apps and websites. I worked at the NFL for a while. That's kind of where I started my career. Went to a few startups after that. And I was working for a company that was building other apps and websites for multiple clients. So I was working on a lot of different kinds of projects. But I just personally became really interested in health and wellness kind of during this time. It was after I graduated college. I was living in San Diego. And I met a friend who I was cooking with one night, and she pulled the vegetable oil out of my cabinet, and she was like, "Julia, what's this? Like, why are you using this vegetable oil?" And I was like, "Oh, what are you talking about? It's heart healthy. It says right there on the front of the package." And that moment made me realize how much I didn't know. Right. I thought that I had pretty much been eating healthy my whole life. I played a Division I sport. I came from a healthy family who cooked like home-cooked meals. And I realized in that moment, if I don't know this, there are so many other people who don't know what they're eating and they don't know what's healthy. So I kind of had this pivotal moment where I realized I haven't actually been eating as healthy as I thought. I've been counting calories and like maybe maintaining a certain weight, but that's different. That's not like eating for optimal health and longevity. So I was inspired to figure out what I didn't know. So I got certified as a nutritionist just on the side of my day job. I did a year-long course to become a nutritional therapy practitioner, which I could have used to quit my job and become a nutritionist and help people learn how to eat healthier. But I wanted to create something that the average consumer could use. Like, not everybody can afford to go hire a nutritionist to educate them on how to eat healthier and like what all these different ingredients are and what they mean. But everybody has a smartphone now. And obviously my whole career in software development, I had that knowledge and that background. So I was like, what if we created an app that would enable people to quickly read the ingredients, understand what's in their food, and make that healthier choice at that moment at the grocery store that they're buying something. So I brought that idea to the company that I was working for, and we kind of bootstrapped it and have been figuring it out since then.
So cool. I love that. And to your point, it's like, not everyone can afford a nutritionist, but it's also like when you're at the grocery store, you can't really like call a nutritionist on call and be like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And so this is so much more scalable because, we were talking about bringing our kids to the grocery store, right? And I was in the grocery store yesterday with my 10-year-old and he was begging me to get a cereal that all of his friends are eating. And I'm like, I can't. I just know all these cereals are ultra processed. And so I don't know anything about this, And so we looked at the label. He's really good because he lives with me. We look at labels all the time. And the one thing he did point out about this particular cereal is that it had a bunch of like names that we could pronounce that actually sounded like real food, and there weren't any artificial colors or anything else in it. And so I thought that was a good thing and I bought it, but it would have been great to have used the app to have scanned the label to know that for sure.
Yeah, it is a good check, right?
Yeah.
And reading the ingredient label can get you most of the way there a lot of the time. But having that confidence of just not having to read every single ingredient, but just, quickly scan it, check if there's anything that you want to avoid, especially as a parent with your kid at the store. You know how it is. It's like chaos.
It's chaos. And they don't want to listen to you.
No, and they're grabbing things. At least I have younger kids. They're like grabbing things off the shelves and trying to make sure they're not like causing a ruckus. I don't have time to sit and read every single ingredient.
Exactly.
So it makes that process quicker, easier, more efficient. And you can leave with that confidence that like, all right, I know that I'm buying something that is made from real food and doesn't have all this other stuff in it.
Right. And to your point about like the oil that's labeled heart healthy, so many foods are marketed as healthy and they use like certain words they're allowed to use. They use certain colors like green and to convince you that this is healthy in some way, right? And the reality is it's not. It's just all marketing.
Yeah. One of my favorite examples of this is like Light and Fit yogurt.
Yeah.
Right?
What is that?
But like it sounds great, right? And vegetable is another example. Like vegetable, it's a vegetable. It must be good for you. So those marketing claims on the front, they will say anything and they will sell to you however they need to sell to you, whether it's, low fat, gluten-free, high protein, you mentioned earlier.
I know.
Like those things aren't going to be what tells you if that food is good for your body or not.
Right.
That truth really lies in the ingredients. And luckily, everybody has to list the ingredients on the package, but it's a little more hidden. You have to turn it over. You have to look through it. You have to understand what those things mean.
Right, exactly. And, we were talking earlier about how the food label traditionally for like the last few decades has been looking at the number of calories, how much protein you're getting is now something that people look at, but doesn't tell you anything about the quality of the ingredients. It's more about just the macro quantity. And to your point that you can get protein from clean sources or ultra-processed sources, right?
Totally.
And it can be completely, still have negative effects.
I saw protein Pop-Tarts the other day.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
No, unfortunately, I'm not. I wish I was kidding you.
Yeah.
But like that's the world that we're living in, where you slap protein on something and someone's going to buy it thinking that they're hitting their health goals. And that is doing more harm to your health than it's doing good. Like I don't care how much protein you put in it. All the other ingredients that exist within those Pop-Tarts are harming your health.
Exactly. And so I think it's important for us to define like What is an ultra-processed food and why is that bad for you?
Yeah.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So ultra-processed foods are foods that have ingredients in them, usually a lot of ingredients in them, like 5+ ingredients that were chemically concocted in a lab. They are not made out of whole foods. So if you look at the label and you read the ingredients, you're like, can I find that ingredient somewhere else here in this grocery store? If the answer is no, then that's likely an ultra-processed ingredient. And the ingredients, that are chemically made is what makes that food ultra processed. And so those are the ingredients that we flag in the app so that you can identify those ultra processed foods. So things like if you think about carrageenan, dextrose, fructose, maltodextrin, high fructose corn syrup even.
Right.
You can't go buy that somewhere at the grocery store.
No.
That is made in a lab and added to foods. So that's the real tell. And the issue with ultra-processed foods is and you talk about this a lot, I know, there's a direct correlation to chronic disease.
Yes.
The more ultra-processed foods you consume, the higher your likelihood of over 32 different adverse health outcomes,
right.
including just like early death. Like you have like a 20% chance of dying early for whatever cause, the more ultra processed foods you eat. And then there's, links to cancer, links to type 2 diabetes, links to heart disease. The consumption of these ingredients causes inflammation, which leads to these chronic disease over time.
Right.
And there's that direct correlation there.
Direct correlation. And so, and there's a big study, a meta-analysis that was done that showed for every 10% of calories you take in from ultra-processed food above your daily caloric requirements, you reduce your chance of living, or you increase your all-cause mortality by 15%.
Yeah.
So it's a massive problem. It's just, to me, it's on the order of like smoking, or drinking heavily or something.
Yeah.
It's,
and over
food is a massive problem.
50% of our diet in America at this point is ultra-processed foods. The average American, over 50% of the foods that they are consuming are those ultra-processed foods. So at that rate, absolutely, it's having an impact on your health.
Yeah, and these, once again, like, it's not food. It's not something that was grown. It's not something that was raised. It's chemicals put together and sold to you to eat. And that's a big problem, right? Because that's not how anyone got their food before 80 years ago.
Right? Absolutely. And they're engineered to be addictive.
And that's the second problem. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
These big food companies are creating products because in a way that make them want to be purchased more, right? So if you bite into a Dorito, it has this like very heightened flavor and it has this very specific crunch that kind of is, I don't know, it's kind of taking advantage of our human biology where like we are seeking out those things. And then we just want to eat more and more of them. So even if you are eating those like quote unquote healthy, ultra processed foods, they still have these flavors, they still have these textures, these colors that make them like hyper palatable. And then your body just wants more and more. So you're just eating more calories too. So not only are you eating these chemicals that, have harmful effects to the body, you're also just eating more calories and therefore, gaining weight and all the issues that come along with that.
Exactly. So problem number one is the actual chemicals have harmful effects that increase your chance of disease. Problem number two is you eat more calories because they actually hire scientists to make the foods hyper palatable. And by hyper palatable, they attack all your senses, the feel of it, the smell, the colors, like how does it look, the crunch, all those things. Like there's scientists that quantify that to a minute degree to understand like what's going to make you eat more. And so you have more calories, which we know, the more calories you eat, obviously the more metabolic disease you get, the more fat you gain, the sicker you become. And then thirdly, those are empty calories. So nutrient density is a big problem, right?
They're completely devoid of nutrients. If you think about like soda and chips and all of those things, they're doing absolutely nothing for you're supposed to eat to get vitamins and minerals and energy for your body to help it to live and breathe and thrive. And those foods are doing nothing in that regard. So they're just, like you said, empty calories that have no benefit. It's only causing harm.
Yeah, exactly. And so all these calories are great for energy production, but when you have foods that don't have nutrients and they're nutrient void, you're eating calories without nutrients. And what that does, it destroys your gut bacteria and it creates more hunger too. It confuses your brain because your brain is supposed to be getting nutrients. That's how it regulates how much it eats. It doesn't turn off its hunger because of the number of calories you've ate. It turns off your hunger when it has enough nutrients, right?
Yeah.
And so these nutrients, sometimes a lot of these ultra-processed foods, they'll add nutrients to the food, once again, as chemicals. So they'll add like B vitamins or vitamin D to the food. But that's still not the nutrients that your body is sensing as, number one, that it needs or to make it full. And so I think a lot of people, they'll look at a food label and they'll see some nutrients like percent daily value of vitamin D or vitamin B that's artificially added in there. But vitamins are not all the nutrients. There's so many more nutrients your body is needing and sensing. There's phytonutrients. There's, the way plants interact with nutrients in your microbiome is very different with real food than with chemically produced food. And so I think all those three categories, caloric density, lack of nutrients and chemicals, are all negative to our biology. And so that's why those are the reasons you want to avoid ultra-processed food, right?
Yeah.
And now, I mean, they used to be cheap, but now, like I said, yesterday I was in the cereal lane. It's like each box of cereal is like $10. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you're spending your money on that is going to bring no nutritional value. Imagine if you put that $10 toward fruits, vegetables, meats that are going to have those nutrients that your body really needs. And the other thing I'll say about that is just that for me personally, it was a complete mindset shift around counting calories. I was always feeling like I was in this restrictive mindset of I can't eat too much, right? And I think a lot of people still have that mindset of, it's calories in, calories out. As long as you only eat 2,000 calories a day or less, then you will, lose weight, whatever it is, which again, weight loss is not the same thing as being healthy, but that's a whole other conversation. But for me, when I switched my mindset from counting calories and managing my food intake that way to trying to just eat more nutrient-dense foods, like eat more vegetables, eat more fruit, more meats, bring more of those things into my diet, I didn't feel restricted anymore. And the more you restrict yourself, the more you're going to feel like, oh, I wish I could have that thing. That's where we're really careful in the Trash Panda app not to rate foods as like good or bad or to give it a specific score, because we don't want people to live in that mindset of like, oh, I can't have that. We want them to learn about the things that are good for their bodies and the things that are not good for their bodies. And then when you're making that choice from a place of, I want to eat this thing because it's going to help my health, or I just don't want to eat that thing. Like I have no desire to eat McDonald's or Doritos or drink Coke or any of those things. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. I don't feel like I'm restricting myself. I'm doing it because it's out of like a love for my body and like I want to live a long life and I want to, feel better. So it just changes that mindset. And I think that really matters to people too.
Absolutely. And what also happens is that, speaking of mindset shift, is your body starts changing its taste buds to actually liking the nutrient-dense food that you're eating. And that causes that same dopamine sensation that you get from for a lot of people, they get it from eating McDonald's or something. I think once you have that shift in diet from ultra-processed food to real food, and your body actually changes its taste receptors, you start getting the same feeling anyway over time. And so you feel really good when you eat like a nice fruit or a salad that you really love. And so it just takes some time. It takes some time to have that mindset shift. And I think also, it's not just a mindset that shifts, it's also your microbiome that shifts, right? And so that can have also a big effect in how you produce GLP-1, which is that hormone that everyone's injecting right now. Your body can produce it on its own once the microbiome starts signaling your gut to produce it.
Yeah. And it is hard for people. I recognize that. Like if you have been eating ultra-processed foods for a really long time, it can be very hard to kind of come off them. I mean, it sounds like a drug, but it is kind of like a drug, right?
Yeah.
And their taste buds are so used to these like really strong, intense flavors and these certain textures that a strawberry doesn't really taste that good, or, chicken and vegetables doesn't really taste that good. But if you can give your body that reset, that opportunity, like a couple weeks of just removing those ultra-processed foods, it will adapt. Things will start to taste different. You will start to enjoy those foods again. And again, it's not about restricting or feeling like you're being on a diet. It's just about focusing on those things that are going to make you thrive, you know?
Right, 100%. So I want to dive into some of these ingredients that are used in ultra-processed food and why they're harmful for you. So you mentioned a few already. Let's talk about high fructose corn syrup, for example. Where does that come from and why is that bad for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's chemically created in a lab from corn, which is a bioengineered ingredient. So that's another component of it. And, you know, heavily sprayed with glyphosate. It's created and added to food because it's really cheap, right? It's cheaper than just putting regular sugar into foods. Right. But the problem with it is that it spikes your blood sugar even more than regular sugar does. Right. But then it ends up in everything in processed food because it's cheap, it's easier to produce. They put it in ketchup. They put it in salad dressing. They put it in a lot of things. I've heard that it's in vitamins, like gummy vitamins for children and for adults. And it's like, that is a huge problem with our food system today is the high fructose corn syrup and just the overconsumption of sugar in general because it gets added to everything. I think it goes back to making those foods really desirable and addictive. Sugar is obviously very addictive in that way. So if you add sugar to it, people are going to want it more. They're going to keep coming back to it. And the overconsumption of sugar is a huge issue. People are consuming way too much. And in that form specifically, the high fructose corn syrup, the fructose that spikes your blood sugar, it's especially damaging.
Especially damaging to your liver because your liver is the one that fructose gets directly absorbed to your liver, and then your liver has to break it down. And people that are really high amounts of high fructose corn syrup, they can get fatty liver disease very easily. And then the other thing about fructose, like you mentioned, is it's in everything now, unfortunately. And so does your app flag this as a problem?
Yes.
Got it.
We have a section for added sugar because there can be over 60 different names that sugar can pop up as on an ingredient label. Right. And I think that's where consumers they know to look for sugar probably, but they don't know to look for all those other things like fructose and dextrose and, maltodextrin and high fructose corn syrup. So we do flag sugar specifically in its own category because it is such a huge problem and something that everybody should be aware of. I mean, a lot of people are consuming more than your daily recommended amount of sugar just in their coffee in the morning. Yeah. You go to Starbucks and you're getting more than 25 grams of sugar in a single coffee.
I know.
And then, it's added to so many foods that you wouldn't expect. So you think, I'm not eating candy, I'm not eating cookies or ice cream or the things that you would expect to have sugar, but you could still be consuming a crazy amount of sugar through your bread, through your, jelly. I think about like a peanut butter and jelly that you feed a kid. There's added sugar in the bread, there's added sugar in the jelly, and there's added sugar in the peanut butter.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's really crazy. And so the other thing I think about when I think about additives in food is all the different food colorings as well, right? And this has become a hot button political topic a few months ago. But can you talk about that a little bit too?
Yeah, they're a huge problem, especially for kids. And who are they marketed to? Kids. Right. It's the kids that want to buy the colorful cereal, the colorful candies, the popsicles, the drinks that are blue and pink and all these different things. But the issue with food dyes, they're artificial dyes, usually petroleum based, and they have known impacts on kids' brains. And they cause neurobehavioral problems in kids, especially the kids that may be experiencing ADHD. And they are damaging to their growing brains. And what really frustrates me about them is that, again, there's absolutely no benefit to having those in our food. It's pure marketing. And they've been removed or not included at all in European countries. They use natural things to dye their foods. But we have different regulations here, so they've been allowed. And we're starting to realize how bad they are. We are starting to, see legislation that's pushing to remove them, and the FDA is starting to phase them out of our foods. But they are still there today. They're something that you need to be looking for and avoiding when you're shopping at the grocery store right now. I think it's great that that is happening. That's all coming from consumer demand, right? Yeah. Consumers saying, wait a second, I know how bad these dyes are for my kids' health. I don't want them in my food. And the industry needs to do something about that. And you're seeing them respond. So I think it's a great example of showing how we do have power as consumers to say, I want to know what's in my food. I don't want these ingredients in my food anymore. And watching how big food companies will just have to respond to that.
Yeah. But I think ultimately the legislation takes so long.
Yeah.
And it's only on one
Totally.
one ingredient.
Yeah, that's
It
a
takes
win,
forever.
but there's
Right,
a long way to
exactly.
go. Don't get me wrong.
But I think the way food companies really change is with money, right? And if they're not going to be making money off of that through people scanning their labels and saying, I'm not going to buy that,
Yep.
then they have to change, right?
Exactly.
And so I think it has to start at the ground roots in every individual voting with their pocketbook, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's ultimately going to be the change. But it starts with you knowing what those ingredients are and what the impact of them is. And then saying, I care about this, you know, and I'm not going to feed this to my kids. So give me something better.
Yes, exactly. And so we talked about added sugars. We talked about food coloring. What's another category that of food additive?
So I would say artificial sweeteners. So the added sugar thing, the response to that has been people know that they're not supposed to eat too much sugar, but then the industry brought in all of these artificial sweeteners and sugar alcohols. And they're like, okay, you don't want sugar. Here's a sugar-free version of this sweet thing that you still want. But unfortunately, those artificial sweeteners can be worse for you, I think, than eating a little bit of more natural added sugar in some cases. They really disrupt the gut. And that, as you know, can have impacts on, everything else going on in your body. So we flag all artificial sweeteners and all sugar alcohols. They all have kind of varying degrees of concern, but I think in general, I avoid them and don't feed them to my kids. Things like aspartame is like in Diet Coke, right? So Diet Coke, it's 0 calories, it's no sugar, but that doesn't mean it's good for you. They're replacing the sugar with aspartame, which has a lot of, known health issues associated to it. So,
Right, exactly. And I also think that there's a direct, like you mentioned, gut health. The microbiome gets disrupted and changes with artificial sweeteners. And so it causes a problem on the microbiome level. And also having sugar come in without any calories as well also confuses the brain. Because once again, it's like there's no nutrient density, yet I'm sensing sugar and your brain goes crazy. And then you also get decreased GLP-1 production with artificial sweeteners as well. So lots of negatives there.
Yeah.
And I agree. I try to avoid artificial sweeteners if at all possible. But then, people always ask, okay, well, you don't want me to have sugar. You don't want me to have high fructose corn syrup. I can't do artificial sweeteners. What can I do? I need something sweet.
Yeah.
What's the solution?
I mean, I think there are more natural sugars that are better. Things like honey, maple syrup, coconut sugar are better forms of added sugar. I certainly consume sugar in my life. My kids consume sugar. But looking for that better quality, because there are vitamins and minerals and nutrients that come along with things like raw honey, right, or maple syrup. So it's not like it's just a complete, devoid of nutrients.
And you have to be careful of maple syrup because they have these maple syrup bottles that look like maple syrup, but it's just high fructose corn syrup.
Great point. Yes, the log cabin pancake syrup that I grew up on is not it.
It's not real syrup.
You have to buy the 100% pure maple syrup. And it's crazy. I was at the grocery store the other day and I was looking at it, and you totally understand why people go this path, right? Because I'm looking at the maple syrup and I'm looking at the pancake syrup, and the cost difference is insane. It's like $2 for a bottle of pancake syrup and like $20 for a bottle of maple syrup.
Right.
So you understand why people make that choice, right? Because it's so much more expensive. But that's where, if you do want to buy a syrup, buy the better quality one, just use it less, like use a little bit of it. Don't go crazy with it. Right. Or if it really comes down to cost, in that case, I would just say don't buy it at all, like find another option, because the complete fake chemical food product is never going to be an okay thing to buy.
Exactly. Some people talk about stevia. There's allulose also. That is a sugar product that is actually reduces your sugar response curve. And it's a fiber product. So I feel like there are some better, I think monk fruit is another one. There are a few better options, but overall in general, trying to add the least amount of sugar is a good idea for your metabolic health.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we still flag those ingredients so you can be aware of them. Like, what is monk fruit? Where does it come from? Allulose and stevia. I do think those are the better versions of the options available, but still you want to be aware of your total consumption of those and not be overdoing it.
Fully agreed. So you mentioned vegetable oils at the beginning. Could you talk about vegetable oils, seed oils, and why they are an issue?
So they're ubiquitous with ultra-processed food.
Exactly.
They're in everything, right?
Everything.
So the rise of ultra-processed food correlates directly with the rise of consumption of seed oils.
Right.
And I think there's such a debate about this. This is so controversial. But I think the issue with seed oils is that we're just consuming way too many, right? Because they are in everything, we're consuming them way more than we should be and what's normal for like the human diet.
Right.
So we do need, seed oils are high in omega-6, and we do need some amount of omega-6 in our bodies. But because we're consuming seed oils in literally everything that we buy, it's throwing off our body's balance of omega-3 to omega-6. Omega-3 is like where you're getting from the olive oil and things like that. So I don't think that inherently they are like terrible. The way that they are processed is not great. They are like chemically processed with hexane, and they are extracted from a plant that like wasn't really supposed to be producing an oil versus like olive oil. It comes from the fruit of the olive, right? Or avocado oil is coming from the fruit of the avocado. So there's differences there. The issue is the overconsumption, the way that they're processed. I think most people could probably do better with consuming those less. And they're in like, you think about the ultra processed foods, but they're also in every single restaurant today is cooking with vegetable oils. So even if you think you're avoiding them on the ingredient list for foods at the store, you're getting them pretty much everywhere else because they are cheap and easy to produce and they keep things shelf stable.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you fully. I think the level of processing that goes into making a seed oil is ridiculous. If you watch any video on that, it's basically a chemical factory
Exactly.
in a bottle.
Great marketing, though. They've they've really figured that part out.
Yeah, and a lot of the processing has to do with making it look nice. So they decolorize it and they have it make that really beautiful golden look. And so you think it's healthy, but it's really been very highly processed. And to your point, there are higher levels of omega-6 in it, and we're just consuming overall way too many oils anyway. So I try to stick to avocado oil, olive oil, coconut oil. To me, those seem like the best options.
Yep. And even like butter or ghee or beef tallow, those are good options too. Like just think about, did it come from a whole food source? What did it take to get that ingredient here?
Right.
Have we as humans been consuming this ingredient for years and years, or is this something that was just introduced into this food supply, a couple years ago?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So say I'm in Whole Foods and I have your app with me and I spend a week in there and I scan everything in the center of the food market with a label. What percentage of those foods would be flagged as unhealthy by Trash Panda versus okay to consume?
That's a good question.
Right?
I would say over 50% are probably unhealthy. And Trash Panda is going to tell you that there's ingredients in there that you would want to avoid. It's tough because I think that is the distinction between ultra processed food and just processed food or packaged food, because a lot of the time people hear the advice, just shop the perimeter of the grocery store. Like if you want to eat healthy, just don't buy anything in a package. Just only buy fresh foods. And like
impossible.
To some degree that's good advice, but like also that's not the world that we're living in. And there are good options available that are packaged, that are convenient. We were talking about before we started recording that I have 3 young kids. I have one 4 and 6-year-old. I need some convenience in my life, and my kids are picky eaters, like all kids are. No matter how much I've tried to like only introduce them to healthy foods, like there are kind of those fun foods and those convenient foods that everybody wants to have some amount of that in their life. So Trash Panda really helps you make that distinction of like, yes, you can buy packaged foods. There can be convenient options, but make sure that they're still made out of whole food ingredients.
Yeah. I think that, to your point, like you need some convenience, right? And some packaged foods are pretty healthy for you. It's just hard to sort through them. But I think
it is.
What's really great is that with an app like yours, once you make the switch and you know what the healthy version of, let's say, a bottle of jelly is, right? you'll always know that, and you'll always pick that forever
Yeah.
moving forward.
Yeah.
And similar, kind of to Trash Panda, is I use an app called Think Dirty to scan, which I'm sure you've heard of. I use it to scan products, like products we put on our skin, for example. And I did that one time, like many years ago, and I haven't needed to do it much since, because once you make a change, you know what's going to work. Like, for me, it's like that's what's in my Amazon cart now, right?
Yeah.
And I think similar to going to grocery store, this can have a similar effect, that you end up learning which are the products that are made responsibly with the least amount of ultra-processed ingredients, and you just buy those.
Totally. Yeah. And it's ever evolving, right? There's new products coming out all the time. Right. So then you'll have those use cases where you're like, okay, I need to check this and see if I want to try this new thing, or all these new protein products. Like, let's now sift through those and see what the best high protein options are. But yes, to some degree, I think once you learn the basics, you can kind of take that. And there are definitely products. One of the ones that I love, and I have no affiliation to this company, I've just spent a lot of my money on their products. But Serenity Kids is like a baby food product. But even my 6-year-old still eats their food pouches. It's like grass-fed beef and vegetables, or just some of them are only vegetable-based, and they're made with avocado oil. And so that's a really convenient food. I can always have that with me. And if my kid is not going to eat anything else because we're out at a restaurant and he tried a new food and he didn't like it, that will always be there.
Right? Yeah.
But yeah, the quality of those ingredients are exactly what I'm looking for. And that's a great example of it's convenient, but it's real food,
Yeah, amazing. How many people are using the app now?
We have over 500,000 downloads at this point. Yeah. It's really exciting. Our growth has been slow and steady, and this movement is really picking up. So I think we are starting to kind of see the opportunity there of more and more people wanting to seek out a product like this that helps them learn about the ingredients. But for me, every single individual that uses the app, it makes me feel so good that I've helped one other person learn about that, maybe swap out one product that they were buying with something slightly better. And that's really what excites me to get up every day and do what I do.
And changing lives, it really does. It makes it convenient and easy and cheap to finally have a nutritionist almost in your pocket going to the grocery store with you, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So have you heard any stories from people that have used the app? Can you give us some stories?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we hear a lot of stories about, I use this to overhaul my diet and I lost 40 pounds, or I'm feeling better than I've ever felt at 65 by, using Trash Panda and learning what's in my food. The one that has stuck with me the most is that we recently had a woman leave a review for us on the App Store that said, using Trash Panda helped me reverse my terminal cancer diagnosis.
Wow, that's crazy.
And that almost makes me emotional because that's huge, and that is her experience paired with, I'm sure, a lot of other things that she was doing for her health and working with her doctor and everything that she needed to do to kind of get there. But it really just shows the power of, taking your health into your own hands, choosing what you want to eat, eating real food, and the impact of that can be so massive. Yeah. I think to some degree, I sometimes live in a bubble, and I think, everybody has access to the things that I have access to, or the knowledge that I have about what to eat and what not to eat. But the reality is that so many people are eating, this food that isn't really food. It's impacting their health. And if they're able to make that change, it can change their life. So,
it's so true.
It's exciting.
I think I grew up in a world where I just assumed that anything in the supermarket was good for me because there's some governmental agency out there looking out for me to make sure that it's all, good and not going to harm me. And it's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
The government is allowed, especially the U.S. government, if you look at what Europe is doing, is very different.
Yep.
The government has allowed a massive amount of chemicals to be sold to us, and they've allowed these same chemical companies to market to us in very tricky, deceitful ways. And you have two generations now of individuals that have succumbed to that and now have chronic disease that's going to kill them because of this horrific combination of marketing and profit-minded food companies. And so finally we're learning that this has been happening. And we just need to all talk about it more. We need to implement it in our day-to-day lives, in our schools, and, apps like Trash Panda make it happen, And so I really hope that all the listeners of this podcast can download the app. It's free to try, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
You can download the app for free, try it out. You get 5 scans a month. You can search for unlimited number of products in the app for free. We have a lot of articles that we write just to help educate you. And then there's a 14-day free trial on the membership for unlimited scanning. So risk-free, you can try it for 14 days and just see what kind of impact it makes and make a decision from there about what you want to do. But
That's fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you putting this out there. Do you have like an Instagram presence as well? Or
Yep.
where can people learn more from you?
Yeah, Trash Panda App on Instagram or trashpandaapp.com. Obviously, you can download the app in the App Store on iOS or Android. And then I'm on TikTok as TP Julia or Trash Panda App as well.
Nice. Well, I congratulate you on putting this together. And I'm so happy that I can be part of the word out there, just getting this out there.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.